And we're live. There we go.
Yeah,
There we go.
so what's up, everyone? It's me, Maiev, with Panda, Binzy, Eki, and Disco. Um, we're in our what day is it today? November 6th, so probably first week after our anniversary stream. We're here to discuss about Evolution Season 3 recap. Uh, some things about the market conditions right now, about Elon Musk buying Twitter, stuff's going on with it. There's also a commotion with FTX. We're also here to discuss some BNB price and, of course, giveaways at the end of the stream. And lastly, we have a new rune word preview. Hope everyone's excited.
Whoa, new rune words. Hell yeah. Come on, guys, show some excitement. Come on.
You know I'm
Hey.
excited. I'm going to throw my wallet. I've got my Zod loaded. I've got a feeling. They seem to include Zod these days. So
Yes,
I
sir.
made sure to buy some.
Well, actually, I'm not sure if the recipe is going to be included. I think maybe the recipe is still going to be a mystery. But obviously we have been having a lot of rune words that do have Zod, so I guess that is a reasonable assumption. Although whether or not
Yeah,
it
I
is going to
should.
hold true is still to be determined.
That's a very good point. So yeah, it's potentially. We never know the rune word recipes either. So even though Eki designs all of the rune words, and some of the other team members support with some of the attribute allocation, we never actually see the recipe until it's released the same time as you guys. So just to avoid market manipulation, essentially. But as Panda did point out, and as I just pointed out, I have noticed a common theme that most new rune words recently, if not all new rune words recently, have included Zod. So just another great reason to keep playing Evolution and keep earning that to craft some of those new items as they do come out, assuming it does contain them. But of course, we do like ensuring our runes do have utility. So that's my speculation. No NFA, no financial advice given. But I certainly I try to load up on Zod anyway, because even if the new rune words don't include them, there are some others that I'm still chasing. So that's me.
A great
Yeah, hold up.
suggestion in chat by TNN.
We
A new
actually have
cape
like
called Maev's Curtain. I think that's a great. I think that's a great suggestion.
True.
Also, if you are in Twitch chat, please confirm that you can hear everybody on here. I know that I think last stream there might have been some issues, at least with the VOD, there were some issues. So hopefully everybody can hear all of us. As far as I can tell, everything on my end looks good. So hopefully it does stay that way. You can hear us all. Great. That's what I like to hear. I guess pun may be intended. Okay, so first of all, actually I think one of you did want to say something else. So sorry for interrupting. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we're not only previewing one rune word, there's actually two rune words.
Ooh,
That's it.
Whoa, two.
prizes all
Thank you,
round.
Maiev.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we'll also be talking about when the new season of Rune Evolution will be starting. Yeah, so I guess we're good.
All right. Are there going to be some changes to that?
Let's wait for the announcements.
Wait for the announcements. Great. Okay. So let's first let's go ahead and look at the Evolution Season 3 winners along with the Evolution Season 3, I guess the Royale winners as well. First things first. So the Season 3, we have Sassy Boy coming in first, Krams in second, Ruzgar in third, Galvin in fourth, and then Mr. Buggins does take the prize for the fifth spot. In Rune Royale, Chaos Myth reclaiming his crown. First place again, Fortress in second. Third place, Mr. Buggins. Fourth, Sassy Boy in fifth, IQ Ballerman. And there you can see the homage items. I believe that they are. That was one Wisp Projector and Nature's. Is that Peace? I believe that is Peace. It is a little bit hard to see on the screen.
Correct.
Yeah. So they were given to the Wisp Projector was for Sassy Boy for first place, Nature's Peace for Mr. Buggins, winning that bonus prize in a very hotly contested fifth spot. We are talking decimal places to really call that one So yeah, great show from everybody who took part. Sassy Boy did have quite the unassailable lead. Crams was actually, really putting some pressure on them, I think, towards the end of the season. But miles away from the rest of the competition. Everyone else, I think, was very focused on that 5th spot. And of course, the Room Royale winner, Chaos Myth, did win $75 in BUSD. So always going to remain as dollars. Nice stable coin there. And of course, there were some consolation prizes to 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, also winning smaller amounts of BUSD as well. So do keep that in mind. Keep practicing through the season, because we have in this tournament every single month. The prize pools may vary depending on everything. But certainly there are opportunities to walk away with a substantial reward, or something completely unique in terms of those Diablo homage items. So do keep playing Evolution. We look forward to seeing what you guys can do. And of course, we're adding effects periodically as well to some of the existing rune words, reintroducing those. Quite a few effects in play that you can see on rune.game/evolution to see what items are offering which attributes that affect your gameplay. And maybe even with these new rune words, we'll see some more attributes being introduced. I haven't seen them personally, so I'm hoping for that. But let's wait and see what happens later in the stream.
All right, and also not pictured, but of course we did do the 100 crafts for the top 10 placing players of the season 3. Unfortunately, no mythic, but I guess that is to be expected.
I mean, we were crafting Exile, and the chance of a mythic is quite low on that one. So I was pleased that we were still able to give a rare or better to every one of those 10th places. Actually, Sassy Boy winning an epic Exile, which is quite the sight. So congratulations to him and all of the top 10 places. And of course, do remember that's on top of any Zod that you've earned through the season. And that will continue to be the case. So these are just additional prizes to compete for. You're still walking away with all that lovely Zod for crafting these potential new rune words, I'm hoping.
Yes, sir. Okay, so now let's take a look at the new rune words. Hopefully this is going to show up on screen properly. It was kind of a late addition, so bear with me. Okay, there we go. Doesn't look too bad. We have Soul Cord. I guess, Eki, if you want to talk a little bit about this item.
Yeah, so originally I envisioned Soul Cord as being something that's more kind of necromancer oriented, as you might imagine, based on the name and the item art. Necromancers kind of have a relationship with the hidden pool, so most of its mechanics are based around that. And in games like Infinite, it would have basically stats relating to binding, summons, and empowering them.
Okay, so unstaking is locked for 7 to 21 hours after harvest. So what exactly does that mean?
So essentially, when you harvest things, you wouldn't be able to unstake for that period of time afterward, which like right now it seems kind of weird because there's no mechanics relating to like wanting to unstake really quickly after harvesting, but some of the attributes coming up will kind of interact with those.
I guess the only similar effect that we have in play at the moment is through smoke, whereby the ability to unstake is locked until the next raid takes place. Once you've equipped it in one raid, you have to wait until the rune reward changes before you can unstake your items. So yeah, interesting to see that mechanic come into play again, but with a much shorter time period as well. So you're looking at potentially harvesting and then unstaking if that's what you want to do. This might be a slightly better item. Very different effects to smoke, of course. Smoke having that really high feed reduction potentially. But interesting, yeah, definitely to see. I think this is, at a glance to me, for raids in particular, an item that you're looking to combine. This is very much a kind of enhancement to some of your other equipment. Because of course, if you don't have anything that sends your harvest to the hidden pool in the first place, you're not really going to get much use out of Soul Cord. So this is really one, you're starting to look at your overall build now. How do I, match these up? Do I have a sufficient chance of going into the hidden pool to justify wearing Soul Cord? I think it brings some interesting mechanics. In addition to actually, do you have enough tokens staked in the hidden pool? I'd love to hear more about that in terms of using the item's full potential. Does that mean if you've got less than 250 tokens in the hidden pool that you're only going to get half of the attribute effects that are stated on there, or something along those lines? Are you able to tell us how that works, Eki?
I'm not 100% certain of the execution, but when I was kind of thinking of this attribute, or the series of attributes this is related to, I was thinking of kind of conditional attributes, or basically attributes that interpolate the value of other attributes depending on some quantity. In this case, it would be the amount that you have in the hidden pool, and 100% interpolation would be 250 tokens. So you have less than that, and the effect is reduced, but you build up to it. I think we've talked before, well, definitely know that we've talked before about things like charging rune words, and that's kind of in relation to that. That's where my thinking was at the time when I was thinking of that attribute.
Okay, so that's interesting. I believe for both mechanics are, well, I guess the unstaking one is a little bit similar to smoke, but on a very a much shorter time frame. So I guess the applications of it will probably be very different than smoke. And of course, the 250 tokens staked in the hidden pool to use the item's full potential, I believe that must be a new mechanic. And of course, this is only the raid stats, so it'll be interesting to see what is in store for Evo on these items as well. But of course, you're going to have to wait until the items are released to see that. Now let's move on to the next item. Windfall! Another ring. Commissioned by a legendary Elysium mage adventurer, this ring is designed to turn devastating blunders into minor errors. All right, Eki, you're up.
Yeah. So, kind of as the description implies, this was sort of like a ring that related to being fortunate or having good luck in instances. So you can see that there's a chance to avoid harvest loss effects. So if you have an item that has that, 1% or more chance to lose your entire harvest, this is like something that counteracts that. So, you have your guiding light with its beefy ass harvest yield bonus, but that chance for the harvest yield to just entirely be gone, this would kind of help you counteract that negative. And yeah, this is it has another example of kind of a conditional attribute, or basically a quantity that you have to fill before you can use the item's fullest capabilities. In this case, with equipping for 168 consecutive hours to receive the magic find bonus.
Because actually, that's quite a significant amount of magic find on a single item. In fact, I think it possibly might be the highest so far. So yeah, we haven't seen magic find come into effect as a live attribute in raids. So perhaps not so as useful right this moment, but that does of course give you that plenty of time to equip it for 168 consecutive hours to get that. So I think anybody looking to max out their magic find, and I think we've previously discussed, so I hope I'm safe to say it again, that that might be one of the only few, if not the only attribute where you can actually go above 100%. So really interesting to see what kind of builds we can get out of that one. For me, I think the interesting one, and possibly one might just need some further clarification on, is that very first effect on there, the attribute of a chance to avoid harvest loss effects, but receiving your harvest without bonuses. Is that saying that if, for example, on your harvest you rolled the chance of actually losing all of your harvest. And we know that there are some runewords out there with that attribute, usually a low chance, but does happen on occasion, that actually in that situation you would still get your harvest, just not without all the other bonuses that you'd normally be getting potentially from your other items you've got equipped.
Yeah. I believe that's the way it'll end up being executed. It's essentially like, you trip and fall down, but you catch yourself at the last moment, and you've lost a little momentum, but you kind of got fortunate in that way. So yeah, it's essentially like you rolled poorly, but then you saved yourself afterward, and you get some of what you would have gotten in return.
I think that's a really, really interesting item. And actually, I was looking at Windfall, thinking just now, do you want that? Don't you want it? There are, a lot of nice other rings that you could equip as well. I think the Magic Find is very appealing. And the fact that first attribute essentially gives you almost like an insurance policy. I mean, you've only got up to an 8% chance of it paying out, I guess. But to even have that kind of insurance policy, as long as some of the other attributes that have similar abilities to counteract that loss of harvest, I think it's going to greatly introduce some new strategic plays to this, and probably people switching between loadouts depending on what they're looking on that particular harvest. It's also interesting to see that actually on the very same item that you've got a chance to avoid that harvest loss, you have got the chance to lose your entire harvest. So that almost feels like we're being wound up or baited a little bit, but interesting item, and I'll definitely be crafting a few, if not only for that Magic Find.
I definitely appreciated the irony there.
Yeah, because getting Magic Find gives you a higher chance to get rare items, right? So
exactly. I mean, we all know Magic Find is something you want overall.
and
the other attributes are interesting.
Yeah.
All right, so that's gonna be the couple of rings coming up for you guys. I think we do have a lot of rings, don't we? It seems like, I mean, I guess I could be wrong, but it seems like rings might be one of the most common equip types, which I guess it does make sense. Everybody does have 2 fingers in the Rune Metaverse.
Oh.
Okay, so I guess with that out of the way, now we can talk about some less directly rune focused topics, more just crypto in general. First off, let's talk about BNB. I've noticed BNB has been climbing and climbing and climbing. Bitcoin has stayed relatively close to the $20,000, $21,000 mark, but BNB, it just keeps going up. It's like 350 now, higher than 350. I think I saw it at higher than 350. I don't look at the prices that much, but I do have a little thing on my stream deck where it does display the price of BNB, and I just noticed it keeps going up. Go ahead,
indeed. Yeah, I mean, I think because I didn't realise it had reached all the way up to 350, to be quite honest, because I try not to check as regularly. It's not as fun as in a bear market, is it? But I did notice it had been climbing and breached 300 only a week ago. So yeah, to hit 350 is great. I think it did dip just below maybe 349 or so before we started the stream. So, but it's great to see. Noticeably, there seems to be a bit of an alt season. Certainly BNB, as you mentioned, has pumped. We have seen similar price movements on Polygon or Matic these days, and some other chains as well. Solana, interestingly, with Google the other day announcing that they would actually become a validator for the chain. Whether their position changes in light of recent news, I don't know. That'd be another interesting twist to see how that plays out. But certainly does seem to be a bit of an altcoin season. Now, that has followed a slight Bitcoin pump because we did drop down into that 18K region. And as you rightly say, back up to flatlining around 2021. Now, whether or not that indicates that this is the alt season after the brief bull movements on BTC and therefore is the final pump before another leg down? Who knows? There have obviously been a lot of people speculating on that. Whether it is just that actually we did bottom out already and we're still flatlining in the accumulation zone, I don't know. It's always hard to tell. I like to personally just wait for more confirmation as to where the market is going before I start dipping my toes in. But yeah, it's nice to see definitely some green on those, even if BTC is kind of flatlining a little bit. Where that goes to next, who knows? Is anybody's guess?
Yeah, this is 100. This is definitely like probably something that is completely and I don't even want to say that. It might just be something that I made up completely in my head, but it seems like I've noticed that. Actually, I don't even know if I want to say it because I feel like I'm just completely wrong. But I guess in my head, I'll say that it does seem like whenever I see BNB do well, I see the S&P 500 follow it. And I think that's probably completely incorrect because that makes no sense at all. If anything, it should be the other way around. But that is like something that I guess maybe I've noticed, or maybe it's just confirmation bias. But like when BNB does well, it does seem like for some strange reason the S&P 500 also does well. Which I guess doesn't really hold true in this case since the S&P did drop quite a lot at the end of last week. But yeah, interesting.
Get your boring boomer stocks out of here, man.
I honestly,
you were mentioning stocks, and I know that was one of the topics on there. So Panda do lead in, but you're talking about boomer stocks. It probably is worth touching on.
well,
Some of those
Fantasy.
stocks more relevant to us, or certainly slightly closer to our world in terms of the tech stocks, and their valuations have completely been obliterated. I think Meta is by far the worst performer out the lot. I think if you held Meta for 7 years, you're now underwater, which is quite unusual for any sort of stock, because that period of time, especially a company as large as Meta, that period of time tends to allow for bull and bear markets and recessions and all the rest of it. Of course, we are now potentially entering one world globally. But it is interesting to see their valuations fall significantly. Amazon too have fallen. I think all the big players, Google, Microsoft, everyone's taken a bit of a dive. Now, was that because they were just very heated and overvalued potentially while there was a lot of money flowing? It's quite possible. And now, of course, we see with central banks increasing the interest rates, that money flow is going to slow down. And quite possibly, as we see in the crypto markets, those that pump the largest tend to fall the largest as well. So perhaps that's what's happening. I do feel that some of the valuations in the stock market were probably overboard anyway. Without wanting to lean into the next subject, I think Tesla in particular was a great example of that. How overpriced they were and starting to feel the heat a bit. So no wonder he's trying to find a new toy to play with.
Okay, so before we do jump onto Elon, let's go back a little bit. I do want to talk about Meta. I think, we are the Root Metaverse, and Meta believes that they are the Metaverse. I'm curious as to what you guys think about Meta. Like, I guess not even necessarily Facebook. I know a lot of people think of Facebook and Instagram when they think of Meta. But, well, I don't use
you can't
Facebook
really
anymore. I feel like...
disentangle the two, honestly.
Yeah, but
They're the same company.
I mean, they are, but I mean, just like on the metaverse aspect of Meta, like, how do you guys feel about that?
So, like, I like that they are pumping money into the R&D for it. Like, you're seeing their stock price get really, like, hammered because of this. But they're doing some really interesting things on that front that nobody else is doing. Like, if you watched or if you've paid attention to some of the things that are coming out of their reality labs, it's like pretty incredible. Like really quick scans of the face will give you just a lifelike avatar that you can then meet with people in a virtual reality setting. Things like that. and that costs a lot of money, and that's not something that shows up in immediate profit, which is why like a lot of people are dropping their stock. You might not even see it come to fruition in the next 5 years, honestly, but when and if, I guess, VR and mixed reality technologies kind of take off, Meta's going to hold a lot of patents. They're going to hold a lot of like the R&D that facilitates a coherent and you know, like high fidelity metaverse. So like right now it's looking bad, but I think on that front they're positioning themselves well, as long as they don't, you know, go bankrupt in the meantime. But like the problem is Meta is Facebook. Facebook is known for its being Facebook, you know, tracking people, feeding them ads at every opportunity, invading their privacy, etc. So in tandem with all this amazing R&D they're doing, there's also this kind of negative element to it where like, okay, yes, you can scan your face for that VR meeting type thing, but then they have a scan of your face and they're obviously going to fucking use it. They have eye tracking in their shit, so they'll be able to like, you know, use machine learning to model your eye movement behaviors and probably use it to feed you ads. It's like kind of a tough situation in that sense. But
Yeah.
I honestly don't see any company doing the kind of research they're doing without having that drawback, because that's our world, the world we live in. Like it's capitalism. You got to feed people ads, you got to make money, and they wouldn't be able to do the research at all if it wasn't eventually going to do that for them.
Yeah, I mean,
Speaking
certainly
of
with the
ads, I've
oh,
been
go on,
seeing
Maiev.
quite a lot of ads. Oh, sorry, Disco, for cutting you off. Yeah, speaking of ads from Meta, I've been seeing like a couple of billboards here, and I'm not sure why they are promoting it or
Is that a
how does it help them.
recruitment? Is that for
No,
recruitment? Or is
it's
that
not.
for users?
They're probably for the users, but it's just showing as Facebook, Instagram as Meta. So maybe
Mhm.
it's a thing for them to showcase that they are now Meta, because probably people they know them as Facebook or Instagram separately, just trying to build their own brand as Meta. I don't know how it helps them, but I've
Uh,
seen a lot on major highways in here.
So we'll get that. I mean, because the idea for them is to combine all of those individual brands into the one umbrella of Meta. And unlike Google and their now parent corporation, Alphabet, you know, Alphabet do just want to stay in the background and pull the strings here, there, and everywhere, and have their hands in all those various Google pies. Whereas Meta is trying to bring together all of those technologies and all of those communities into one large community. I think they're in a on a very interesting journey. I think they grew to the point where they, you know, had estimated around 2 billion users globally. Now, considering the global population is only around 6-7 billion, maybe closer to 8 now. We do like to breed a lot, myself personally, but with the with that kind of user base, there is a limit to how much you can grow as a company when you've already got a quarter of the globe's population. And bearing in mind that some users are far too old to use a computer and other users are far too young to use a computer, they probably captured 60-70% of the kind of market available to them. And at some point you're going to dilute yourself because everyone's already got your product, so you can't put it into more people's hands because it's in everyone's hands. And I think that's why we've seen a slowdown in the growth and in the user base. And of course, with other technologies catering to more specific audiences where they were trying to encompass everybody as a whole, those people with specific interests are going to find their niches and start moving into those areas. So interesting challenge for them is to not so much grow, well, look for growth because capitalism demands growth at all costs, but also then actually looking to just retain their user base and keep their user base on those existing platforms. That is the biggest challenge in the light of the new competitors. You've got TikTok, you've got Twitter, you've got these other social platforms where You can do the same thing. Maybe you can't do it all at once because Facebook has got very good at bringing everything into a central location to try and retain those users. But, you know, most people aren't interested in everything. They want something specific, and therefore they will go to the platforms that cater to that specific need, like Twitch for videos or YouTube for videos, instead of seeing the videos on their Facebook newsfeed. So I think that's been the challenge, and I think that's also why they're so focused on the metaverse, because that is the ultimate encompassing of all of their products and offerings. You know, if you're in a digital world and experience, you can be fed all of those different things through the same challenge. And of course, as I think Binzy's just pointed out in the chat, you know, they branded Meta. It was bold. Binzy can see them going backward on that. I think it feels like they fully put their chips down, not just with the rebranding, but also with the amount of money that they pumped into R&D for Metaverse. Now, whether they'll be the most successful one, I don't know, simply because, as Zeki pointed out, there is a lot of hesitation and distrust in Facebook, and probably rightly so. Eki mentioned the eye tracking. That very much is intended to understand your behavior as to what ads engage you and don't engage you, and how much attention you're focusing on them, so that they can serve you more relevant adverts, and hopefully see your eyes actually focusing on those. Could also be used more sadistically in that at the moment, I personally do it, you know, if you play a free game on mobile or something like that, and you're forced to watch a video in order to get an extra life or something like that, that's the time I go out for a cigarette while the video's playing or whatever it is. And actually, with eye tracking technology, what they can then do is actually force and it ensure that you do watch that video in full to get your reward out of it. So
yeah, exactly.
So there's natural concerns around Meta doing that. It is good that they're putting money into the space. Are they going to be the dominant force? I don't know. It seems that some of their technologies are probably going to branch out, and I suspect, my personal view is maybe they end up being more of a patent company in terms of the coding language, in terms of some of the technology stacks and applications to enable that metaverse experience. But I personally still believe in quite a fragmented metaverse overall. I think each metaverse will offer its own USP and have its own experiences, but hopefully there will be that collaboration or cross communication between them, at least, so you can still take your assets and so forth to those other experiences. Of course, here at Room, you know, we do ensure that you can take your assets to all of our experiences. We can control that, and we can make sure that we give you that full metaverse experience in that sense. And we do see some other projects coming out with cross compatibility in terms of their assets and reusing those. So we hope that is the future for the wider metaverse and industry. But we've got backups to ensure that, you know, we can still deliver that vision, even if nobody else goes down that path. Fortunately, that it seems they are, but business is business, and people change, and they can quite easily pull the plug on something if they want to, if they've got the copyright and the patents and so forth. So we're hoping Meta will be open. I personally don't want them to be the most successful one. And I do feel like their user base isn't all that convertible into the metaverse, just from an initial perception, let alone all the technology and cost barriers and all those other things, because their audience is far too wide. I think it's much easier to get an audience and community into the metaverse who's already got an interest or has some technology experience, certainly until the technology and the accessibility improves, which we're realistically still a decade or two away quite easily, I think.
Okay, so I like to I think MKBHD, he did make a video about Meta, maybe not necessarily the metaverse, but he did make a video about it. And I at least from my perspective, it might be because I'm not really within the demographic anymore to be using Facebook, to be using, I guess I still do use Instagram a little bit, but I think what he said was that basically Facebook, or I guess Meta now, can tell that, you know, Facebook is kind of like a dying thing, right? So instead of reinvesting more into their platform, they're using it to reinvest somewhere else. And I think that made sense to me. But of course, like, it's hard to say, because is it just because I'm not in the demographic for Facebook? Like, do people still use Facebook? They do, right? Is it still growing? I don't know. To me, it's not, but does that mean that it's not? I don't know.
Well,
I think in terms of active users, the numbers are dwindling and they are losing people regularly. Now, the users that are on the platform, I think, are still just as engaged, maybe slightly less. I haven't really looked into the data for that. But I think in general, those who are engaged with the platform stay engaged with the platform. But we do see individuals moving on to other platforms that cater more specifically to their desires and the type of content they want to consume.
Gotcha, makes sense. Okay, so I just want to go back to the meta topic just one more time before we move on to something else. I don't see anybody else talking about this, which is kind of strange to me, but it almost feels like to me, meta is, at least right now, it seems like they're less of a metaverse like company or whatever you want to call it. It seems like they're more of a VR or AR company. Everything they make is revolved around VR. Their headsets are around AR, VR. But is that necessarily the metaverse? I mean, I guess the metaverse itself has a lot of different definitions, right? Like here at Rune, I think we're not necessarily focused, at least right now, on making VR or AR, but it definitely still a metaverse, right?
Yeah, well, I think, again, metaverse is a very loosely defined term because no one's truly delivered it yet. So it can be open conceptually in terms of what it actually means. I think generally it's accepted that it is a online, persistent digital world that you can interact in. And that, of course, is what we're trying to create, or hopefully have created to some extent. You can't fully go in and explore it in a 3D world in the same way that you can do with some of those other experiences that classify themselves as metaverses. I think we'll see more of that kind of aspect in Sanctuary, where you can have raid parties with your friends and your chats and all the rest of it. But then at the same time, ultimately it's a digital experience, and it's that persistency. That your things are still there and they go from one experience to another, and very much like in real life, if I buy a watch, I will keep that watch for however many years and I'll take that wherever I go. And that, I think, is one of the key concepts around the metaverse in terms of that digital asset side of things. But yeah, I think it is still quite open to interpretation because nobody has truly delivered it yet.
Is it fair to say that maybe Meta is more focused on making the hardware and the, I guess, different ways to bring you into the digital world, whereas I guess here at Rune we're more focused on creating the digital world in the first place?
Well, I think they have the ammunition and the budgets to focus on both. So they are actually trying to tackle the metaverse from every single angle. So as you say, they are focused on the hardware and making that accessible and sometimes affordable, or not so affordable if it is, the very high-end gear like they've done with the newest hardware release. But also they are focused on building new coding languages, new technologies specifically to support metaverses and that online persistence. And that, is quite a task in itself. But again, they got the budget to do that. And they've got the budget and political and sway and influence across other industries to bring other companies on board and to use those tool sets. What that means in the future for their control and how many fingers they got in each pie, I don't know. But some of it is unfortunately open source still. So I think they're trying to go at it from all angles. They've got enough money. I think it's one of those, it's a do or die for them. Either they put everything into the metaverse and pull it off, and they will remain as the largest, most successful company possibly of all time to some extent, maybe not financially necessarily, but in terms of the number of global users and people interacting with that firm. Or they go for that and then fail magnificently, which is, when you look at the stock charts, is certainly what appears to be the case. But I think, if they can maintain operational funding for the time being to retain those, I think they're putting themselves in a really good position. I think technology is at that point now where the next big innovation is going to be something really bold. And normally we see those from the smaller places and companies that don't have anything to lose and can afford to take a bit of a gamble. But I think they're just in such a unique position of being so dominant everywhere, or had been so dominant a few years ago everywhere they went, in that they just needed to look at something new because they knew it was going to fade out sooner or later.
Gotcha. Okay, I think that was a great chat about meta. But speaking of magnificent falls, educate us on FTX, Disco.
Yeah, I wanted to hear that as well.
Yes, so there is. So first of all, I put the disclosures out. This is not financial advice. There is potentially a lot of speculation in this. What I really want to do is just kind of capture my findings in exploring the subject and as to what information is being thrown around at the moment, because this is a live subject. It is happening right now, playing out in real time. These things move somewhat slowly, but also quickly enough to usually catch people off guard from a financial investment aspect. So there is some speculation, or an article was recently published following a Cointelegraph investigation into Alameda Research's finances, just to understand their balance books slightly better as to what assets they hold, their liabilities, and how those were reformed. And what was discovered, according to Cointelegraph, is that actually the majority of Alameda Research's assets were FTT tokens, which is the native token of the FTX exchange, similarly to how Binance issue their BNB token, and also a number of other side projects that Sam Bankman-Fried, who's the CEO of FTX, had previously released, which have now largely flopped. A lot of the token values dropping 99%, things like maps and a few other projects they released. So what was somewhat unique about this situation, or what's interesting about the situation, is that with all of these token supplies, bar I think one of them, FTX or Alameda, they're kind of interchangeable parties at this point, actually controlled the majority of the supply of those tokens, to the point where the supply they controlled exceeded the circulating supply, which, if anyone's been in crypto long enough and has potentially played on a few new launches, knows that is quite a way to rug a community, is that you just dump all your tokens on them, far exceeding what liquidity is available in the markets. Now, nobody's suggesting that is going to happen, but what it does indicate is that they have quite a large control over the price of FTT and all those other tokens as well. Controlling that much supply, they can easily do that. So the understanding then, and what the findings were from this article, is that the FTT token issued by FTX was then lent to Alameda Research, which was a subdivision or another company owned by Sam Bankman-Fried. And what they would then do is say, well, look, we've got all these FTT tokens, which are worth X amount of millions or billions of dollars, and therefore we've got lots of collateral. And they'd go to lending companies and say, will you lend us some money? We'll put up $300 million of FTT tokens and you'll give us $100 million of stable coins, which from a lender's perspective, yeah, they're happy to take on the risk if they're risk managed and all the rest of it, they're getting interest and whatnot. But the issue with that approach is that these FTT tokens, and especially if somebody does hold such a large control over the supply, far exceeding the total circulating supply, it means that actually the chances are that price is heavily manipulated. And of course, this is the suggestion, in that what they were doing is minting FTT, giving it to Alameda. Alameda would say, look, we've got all these FTT tokens worth all this money. Of course, you'd never actually be able to cash it out at those values because of the liquidity on the market and the circulating supply. But on paper, it looks like you've got all this money that you've just printed. And they would then go to lenders and say, we'll give you this as collateral if you please lend us $100 million, $200 million, 10,000 Bitcoin, whatever it is. And then by obtaining that new collateral from the lenders, backed by potentially or allegedly worthless, to the extent that they can't all be liquidated at price, tokens and collateral, they would then have gained all this extra money, at which point they can say, well, hang on a minute, look, our asset sheet has grown from $1 billion to $2 billion because we just minted more FTT, and then you lent us a few hundred million. So now we're a $2 billion company. Will you lend us a bit more? And they're essentially going around to all these lenders borrowing as much as they potentially can do against FTT as the collateral. And this is what's colloquially known as the flywheel scheme. And if it sounds familiar, this is pretty much what Celsius were doing with their token on sale, in that they would get investors to deposit money into Celsius. They'd use that money to buy Celsius back from the open market, even though they controlled most of the supply, to raise the prices. The value of Celsius goes up, and therefore the value of their assets on their balance sheet increases, and all of a sudden they're much richer, so they can attract new investors, whether that's VC funding, whether that's just retail investors as well, on the premise that actually this company must be solid. They've just got $2 billion out of nowhere. And it looks very similar to what FTT are potentially doing as well. So that's one aspect. It'd be interesting to see how that played out. That article, I think, was written about 2 days ago. There's been a lot of noise circulating around it since. Now, what makes this, I think, more and more interesting is that Binance were a equity investor in FTX a long time ago, worth about $2.1 billion, I think is what CZ said on Twitter earlier. At the time, or that was the total value of the deal, some issued in BUSD, some issued in FTT tokens. Now, since the publication of this article accusing FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried from essentially using a flywheel scheme to artificially inflate the value of their balance books and take more collateral out of other places within the market, Binance have now they put out a public statement to say that they're not happy with that approach. They are going to consider their options, and have subsequently said they're actually going to offload all of their holdings of FTT, which I think currently is worth about $500 million. So this is potentially going to have an impact on the market, not just in the terms of the value for FTT and FTX, but if that then did cause liquidations on Alameda's loans, which were backed by possibly FTT as capital, as the value of FTT dropped, the value of their collateral would drop. And if that meant they resulted in liquidations, we could see potentially, I suspect, quite wide ramifications across the market, similarly to how we saw with Luna and UST, where that permeated the market essentially with inflated valuations. So again, this is half speculation, half supposed journalism, where it's based from, and we wouldn't advise you to react one way or the other. But I think it was such a big story that it was worth kind of just touching on at the moment. And again, because this is happening right now, it was only a few hours ago, I think, that Binance announced that they were going to offload their FTT tokens. They suspect over the course of a few months, because it's so illiquid and nobody wants to buy it. I think when you look at the on-chain activity for FTT tokens, it looked like they had a monthly active users of about 10 to 20 a month. So where they're getting these, I think it's about $8 billion market cap valuation from, with $3 billion circulating, is bizarre. And again, you wonder how that can be justified if there is no interest. Are they artificially propping that? And again, just using those numbers, and I think they're about right. If you've got a $3 billion circulating supply market cap and you're holding yourself another $5 billion worth of those tokens, you're never going to be able to offload them at that price. And again, this is how they were inflating that valuation, it seems. So it'd be interesting to see how that plays out. I would recommend, if you are invested in the crypto markets, probably just worth keeping an eye on the news. Again, is it coordinated FUD? Some people are saying that, would it potentially be advantageous to Binance to fund FTX? Well, possibly. They are a direct competitor and the closest in size, I think, especially if Binance have some tokens. I mean, from that aspect, is it good for them to fund FTX? Probably not, because the value of those tokens they hold will only depreciate. But at the same time, might put their closest competitors out of business. So, yeah, it's a very interesting scenario. Interesting to see how it plays out. Yeah, Binzy has said that they personally, on the back of that news, would get off FTX for sure. That has seemed to be the sentiment. There were some people reporting withdrawal issues, which of course is another good sign. I haven't followed up to see if that's still the case. I think from what I could gather reading through Twitter, it seemed to be certain tokens and on certain networks. Some people saying USDT was fine, but BUSD was not. and likewise with withdrawals to Ethereum. But of course, this we've seen it in the past when those kind of big Ponzi scheme companies collapse. They do tend to limit withdrawals as the first thing because they need to try and retain whatever collateral they have because they never had enough to pay everyone in the first place. So whether that's the case here, I don't know. Again, no financial advice, but just something if you are invested in cryptocurrencies to be aware of and potentially go and do some research on and have a look at as well. So yeah, that's that one. Be interesting. I think by next week there'll certainly have been some developments. Exactly what that development is, I don't know, but I'll try and keep an eye on it and catch everyone up on this.
That's definitely crazy. I mean, with the whole Luna thing, Luna was big, but I don't think they were anywhere near the size of FTX. You know, when you look at FTX, they have sponsorships, obviously with, FTX Arena, the arena of the Miami Heat. They have, they have TSM FTX. That's a big sponsorship that they have, a 10-year deal with TSM. They have a sponsorship with the LCS. I believe they also are now partnered with GameStop and everything that GameStop brings. So,
and
I
again,
feel like,
Solana as a chain is another Sam Bankman-Fried project. And as I think might have mentioned earlier, on Google are now going to have announced that they're going to become a validator. So Sam Bankman-Fried himself very well connected, and there is speculation that actually it's due to those connections and his political influence and recent attempt to influence politics within America and regulation there for decentralized finance that he might be a target of potentially coordinated fund action and so forth. But I mean, I saw the proposals, they were pretty horrendous. Essentially, he was looking to make it illegal or force everyone to KYC if they're going to use DeFi, except those who knew how to interact with smart contracts directly. Because I think in the knowledge that the general public won't be able to do that, and therefore he'd kill off DeFi and competition, regulate it, but still be able to manipulate it himself. So he did make some U-turns following those initial statements and publication of his letter, and did make some updates to that. There was a pretty horrendous interview that he did where he was questioned around being a proponent for email and whether or not he believed that if there was a private secure email, that the front end for that should be forced to KYC and follow these kind of same regulations. He was strongly against that. But when questioned as to, well, how is that any different to, let's say, for example, Aave or Venus as a platform, having their UI forced to go through these KYC restrictions, he stumbled for words, and that wasn't really great at all. So do watch this space. I think even if you just get the popcorn out and just sit on the sidelines for it, or maybe move into some stables or something. Interestingly enough, actually, the FTX only recently announced that they were going to start issuing their own stable coin, and we know how those kind of things tend to play out unless they are truly backed and collateralized. So I've definitely been entertained over the last day or two reading this and finding how this space is moving. I think Twitter is probably the only space you're going to find this at the moment. Maybe it'll filter down into mainstream news shortly, but yes, do watch out for that one if you're invested.
So I think.
Speaking of
Twitter,
Twitter,
go ahead, Maiev. Go ahead.
Yeah, speaking of Twitter,
we'll talk about that,
Twitter,
but
right?
we'll talk about that. But I think with the amount of time that we have on the stream, I think we should probably talk about that while we're doing the Pandemonium games.
Oh, yeah.
That'll give us a topic that we can do as we're gaming. But back to the FTX thing, just for 1 second, Disco. So when you talked about like the FTT token or whatever it's called, having just like a few active users, how is that possible? Is the FT? I'm guessing, like, at least from I don't know anything about it, but I'm thinking about FTT as the equivalent of like BNB, right?
It is, yeah. So similarly to how Binance have the BNB chain, FTX and FTT token have their FTT chain. And the monthly active users on that from the limited data I've seen is minimal, averaging about 10-20 users a day, I think, spiking at one point to about 10,000 wallets being created in one day because some shitcoin launched. And then from there on, again, user activity went right down. I think in terms of trading volumes for FTT token as well, again, BNB is widely chained, widely paired throughout on various chains and AMMs within LPs. So it does have quite active trading volume on chain that can be measured. FTT, I think, again, can be used as collateral on chain in some places, but the actual trading volumes are quite low, which then also is another suggestion as to, well, you know, if there aren't that many users buying and trading and using that token, then why does it justify such a large valuation? And put some questioning on that, I think.
Yeah, so that's kind of my question, is that how did this go unnoticed, or how is this not like a thing that was talked about when people are investing in FTX, or just in general, right? Like if people think that the valuation is either manipulated or incorrect at the current valuation, like surely you can see how many people are actually trading FTT, right? You can see like everything. So how are they hiding it?
You can see the on-chain metrics, but bearing in mind that FTT is the token of the FTX exchange, and exchanges or centralized exchanges don't tend to publish much data, if any data at all. So that's kind of one of the aspects to it as to why potentially it was hidden. I think also in light of Celsius and Voyager collapsing, and some others were speculated to be illiquid as well. Freeway, I think, was the recent victim in all of this. So again, all of these operate on a very similar flywheel Ponzi scheme, essentially, in that just mint more tokens. It looks like your tokens are worth loads, and then people come and invest in you, and then you can buy your tokens off the free market and put the price up. And then because the prices went up, all those other tokens you minted to yourself and held in your wallet, the value of those has increased. So as a business, when you look at month-on-month valuations on your balance sheet, well, it looks great, doesn't it? Like, you know, I've just doubled in value from last month, and again next month I'm going to double in value. In terms of what value you're actually producing, that hasn't changed at all, and potentially there was never any in the first place, but on paper it looks like, you know, this is going great. And therefore, when people see that kind of performance from a financial institution, then it is going to naturally attract more investors. You know, oh, this trader's really good, they're obviously making a lot of money. Well, you know, maybe we'll put some money into them, or we can definitely, you know, it's fine to lend money to them because they're going to pay back because they've got all this money sitting in their bank account. And that's how it kind of works, essentially. But of course, it only works up to a point, because when you get to that point where you can no longer attract new investors, and in these kind of market conditions, that is becoming harder and harder to do. And people start looking more closely, especially when they've seen similar schemes collapse as well. Then, yeah, it comes a point at which it needs to unwind, if that is truly what's happening. And of course, when those situations do unwind, they do tend to unwind with some force, as we saw with Luna. I don't think it's going to be similar to that. I wouldn't have suspected, because the challenge with UST is they permeated it throughout every single chain. You know, that the team behind that really went to make sure that UST could be and would be traded everywhere, because for them it is a way to get exit liquidity from all these other token pairs. But that meant that when UST crashed, it did bring everything down, and there was huge knock-on effects. Now, FTT, I think, is more isolated, but there are going to be lenders and lending pools that could be severely impacted by this. So MIM, the Magic Internet Money, is one of those protocols. So similar to Aave or Venus, you can deposit collateral, and then you can borrow stable coins or other coins against the value of that collateral. Now, FTT have borrowed, basically maxed out their borrow limit against the value of their Alameda Research have maxed out the borrow amount against their FTT collateral in MIM, which is a few $100 million. So from their perspective, if FTT value crashes, their position will be liquidated and the protocol will suffer and incur debt, but they've still walked away with a few hundred million in stablecoin. Now, if that token was worthless in the first place, or they can just mint it at will and issue it to themselves at will, which appears to be the case, then it is no real loss for them, because they've still got that few hundred million in stablecoin. And this, of course, would be the concern, is that then means that protocol was in debt, which is quite often regular investors losing money. All those lending firms, if it is a managed lending desk, they would then need to try and recoup their losses or add to their collateral positions to cover those losses. And that's where the ramifications and chain reactions could start occurring with forced sales and so forth. As you saw with UST, once that started going down, everyone who's exposed needed to also dump all their other assets or supply more collateral due to the fall in value of those. So that's where we could end up getting. So who knows?
Yeah.
I don't think it would be quite as severe, but it'd be interesting because Alameda Research do back a lot of projects. And that's the other thing I think worth bearing in mind as well. They have invested a lot into upcoming projects, GameFi, DeFi, NFT projects, lots of other similar on-chain things and Web3 innovations. Now, those investments have already been made, but what then happens if they were to collapse as a company? I don't know how that would impact all these other projects that were potentially relying or expecting further funding from them as well. So again, just another layer that makes it interesting from an observant third party who's not too impacted by all of this. But yeah, may or may not be cause for concern if you are invested on those. Should you take your money out of FTX? I guess is always better safe than sorry. Like worst case, you just go trade it somewhere else. Or in a best case scenario, all you've done is move your money and trade elsewhere. In a worst case scenario, you could have ended up losing all of your funds and leaving it on FTX. So who knows? Yeah, just something to consider and be aware of, I think.
So basically, FTX, they watched that one YouTube video that was like a guide of making your own crypto coin, and then having a huge valuation for it, and then just like minting more and then becoming like a millionaire.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
that's essentially
look,
what they did.
Crypto.com, I don't think that it's to the same extent, because unlike Celsius and unlike Alameda Research, they didn't start going out and offering that as collateral and getting loans elsewhere. But again, an exchange, they minted their own token, created their own chain, and then dumped that on retail. But again, because of the initial slow release of supply out to the market and holding most of the circulating supply, it did artificially inflate the prices. And again, they were buying back most likely tokens to inflate those prices further, which means that the value of all their other holdings that realistically could never have been sold on the market still increases in paper value, which gave them big marketing budgets or getting that investment in sponsoring the Super Bowl and doing whatever else they did, Matt Damon and all the rest of it. So yeah, I think long term it's good for the health of the industry if there are firms operating in this way, that they do collapse, because it does put us in a better position, or hopefully makes it less likely that these things permeate wider through society and become more prevalent, or remain prevalent, I should say, within the industry. However, it's also never to forget that at the end of the day, the people who suffer the most tends to be retail investors and those who genuinely can't afford to lose in these situations. So although I talk about it being entertaining, that's only with the view of forgetting temporarily the actual human cost to all of this as well, and why it's so important that we weed this stuff out and get rid of this aspect within the crypto industry before we truly go mainstream and out to the worldwide population, which I think can happen. But I think with things like that in place, it's not going to, or it's going to be a much trickier journey.
Okay, great. Thank you, Disco. We do appreciate all of your knowledge that you bring to the table. I think now it's time. Let's go on Evolution, play some Pandemonium games, and while we're at it, we can talk about Twitter. But first of all, everybody, let's get on Evolution North America. Play some Pandemonium games.
Also, Binzy, we need to like be able to revert pandemonium.
is is that still a problem?
All right. Right. Evolution.
All right, a couple minutes for everybody to get on Evolution. So, guys, Twitter, it's private now. I believe no longer publicly traded. Elon Musk did buy the whole thing. Very controversial. I think people probably have different opinions about it. You do now have to pay to get verified, but I guess we did talk about this a little bit before the stream. Apparently, maybe you always had to pay to get a check mark. I don't know. I'm not too much of a Twitter user. I do browse it occasionally. But what do you guys think?
So there was an interesting, and I'll try and let others talk because I know it's just been me all this stream so far.
You have been talking a lot.
Just my thoughts on that quickly. I think I did see an interesting comment from people because Elon Musk is touted as the proponent of free speech and freeing Twitter to speak freely and enabling free speech on the platform. Yeah, he then goes and charges $8 a month for it, which is, of course, paywalling free speech is the exact opposite of actually enabling it. I think history shows us we should always be cautious when billionaires buy media, because it is only ever to further their own agenda, regardless of what they say about free speech or representation. History tells us they will just use it to further their own agendas and stuff. For crypto speculators, and I think the markets have seemed to be pricing this in already, there is that possibility that actually somebody as a sort of proponent of Dogecoin, BTC and other cryptos might then enable direct crypto payments within Twitter. That might be an interesting aspect for some people, and maybe that's what gives them the support. For me personally, just like all other billionaires, he's walked in and he's made a lot of people's lives miserable, namely the 50% of staff that he's sacked. So those are the kind of things, I personally dislike about capitalism and against him for that. I also think that regardless of how well he sells himself as a good person, you can't become a billionaire without being inherently evil and greedy, because otherwise you would just never have collected that much money in the first place. So we'll see, but that's my thoughts on it. Oh, sorry, one other thing you mentioned about it being free previously. It was always a free verification service. There was a waiting list that you had to go through. You had to have enough subscribers or be some personality, and eventually you would get verified. News reports would suggest that actually the verification team themselves were manipulating that and blackmailing people into paying for the verification service. So essentially they would tell users, you're not going to get through the backlog anytime soon. It might take months, years, maybe never, or you can pay us anything up to $15,000 and we'll give you that blue tick straight away. So I think there were also a few irated users who, once the news came out around Twitter, looking to charge $8 a month for that blue tick, and people voiced their concerns because previously it had been free. There were also some on there saying, what you're talking about, it's never been free. That cost me $15,000. So, I feel bad for those because they've definitely been rugged. Whether Elon compensates them, and he's definitely got pockets deep enough to do that. But of course, my comments around billionaire still stand. So that's my view on it. I need another drink, so I'll leave this one to Eki or Maiev or Binzy or even yourself, Panda, to give some thoughts on it.
Oh no, go ahead, Eki. I want to hear Eki's thoughts, just because I think Eki's probably views on it are probably going to be very different than mine. At least that's just my assumption.
Well, in a lot of ways, I agree with Disco. I think, honestly, the only reason he went through buying it is because he was going to be court-ordered to do so in the coming weeks. Like, I think early October, mid-October was when they were going to go to trial for the whole thing after he backed out, because originally he wanted to, because his dumb ass was like, I don't want to read the contract, let's just get this done with, and then like basically tried to push it through, and then Twitter was like, all right, and you know, he wanted to back out but couldn't. Now he's trying to market his purchase as him being a proponent of free speech, when in fact he's just an opportunistic billionaire who has a lot of money and literally wanted to buy the influence. He probably really likes the fact that he now is at the top of everyone's feeds regardless. And yeah, I don't know. Like, as far as using Twitter from here on out, like it's a little dubious. The monthly fee, it eventually, it's either going to be a worthless perk, or it's just going to crowd out people for the subscription, right? So like he'll prioritize the posts coming from people who are subscribed, or I guess Twitter will, which means that people who aren't get crowded out. Is that free speech? I don't really think so. And he also basically talked about, oh, you're free now, or whatever, like you're free to be humorous, it's okay to have a sense of humor on Twitter, and then immediately backpedaled and whined when advertisers were like, all right, we're leaving. And basically reiterated his I guess commitment to content moderation thereafter. He's trying to play all sides and market this in a way that he, you know, simultaneously makes Twitter successful, but is also still well liked and seen as a proponent of all these, you know, human rights and free speech and whatnot, when that's just not the case. And one thing that I do like that has come out of this is that Mastodon, which is a decentralized social network essentially, or federated, I guess is the term, is their usership is like skyrocketing at this point. And I've actually jumped on Mastodon, and it's pretty nice. Like it's weird how used to the algorithm you get, like feeding you posts, and then you go to Mastodon and it's just straightforward. Like the people you follow end up on your timeline, and everything is ordered in terms of time.
Wow.
You can choose to like subscribe to different servers, follow different people, etc. You can look at different timelines, but it's all just organized by how recently it was posted, so people don't get crowded out. If you know, you have a chance of your post being seen by someone if you post it. It's not just going to get crowded out because you haven't posted much recently, or people don't typically engage with your post. It's just like flat and fair, which is a really interesting, well, I don't know, it's a breath of fresh air for me. I always felt like Twitter was just one of those platforms where it's a clout chase, a constant clout chase. Like, it's all about the followers, it's all about the likes and the retweets, and if you don't get those, you don't get seen, etc. And I don't know, I'm very jaded when it comes to things like that, so.
I do want to say that I believe, unless they changed it recently, I do believe that there is an option that you can toggle to see everything in chronological order, where it's not driven by engagement or anything like that. I believe that you can do that on Twitter. I don't believe you can do that on Instagram. Instagram, I know, used to be, you know, chronological. Now it's definitely, you know, catered to what they think you would like. But I think on Twitter you can still just sort of chronologically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess like having it by default is, I mean, Twitter's basically depending on you going with the default heuristic, which is a thing that the majority of people do. Like, they don't change the default setting, even if it's something that's kind of like abrasive to them. They don't even necessarily think of the option to change it. Yeah, unless they're.
Yeah, I think exactly that. People
do.
I think most people aren't even aware that these things have happened to their newsfeed. But again, it's that more, using AI to essentially sell you more ads and keep you more engaged with the platform, trying to work out what you do and don't like, with Elon Musk now slipping in there regardless of whether you follow him or not.
Hey, I think this actually brings us back to something we talked about maybe last week, is that I don't update my apps. And Instagram is one of the reasons why I don't, is because back in the day, they had everything, just like chronologically sorted, right? Whenever someone posts, you would see it. And then they changed it. And that's one of the reasons why I didn't upgrade Instagram for the longest time because of that.
Yeah, and I
it's irritating.
still use Facebook, unfortunately, and it's
Really?
very much the same. Yeah, I do, just because I don't know why. I'm probably addicted. I guess it's just habit forming now after so many years.
I still do use Facebook.
Really?
Yeah.
But basically, all I do is just look for some news. 'Cause, I really don't watch cable TV anymore. I usually rely on Facebook for some news on the local media,
Oh, I use Reddit for that.
as well as I keep the messenger so I can contact my friends and all.
So
Oh,
interesting, actually. You mentioned Reddit,
Yeah.
and I guess relevant somewhat because we talked about the wider crypto industry today. I don't know how many people are aware that Reddit now offer NFTs.
Oh, yeah.
Cleverly, I haven't called them NFTs. They are just avatars in a vault, which of course is layman's terms for a wallet. And they can now be withdrawn to the Polygon chain and traded
Wow.
on OpenSea as well. So actually, what Reddit have done is brought NFTs to the masses. And I think we might have touched on this many streams ago around, quite possibly, we're of obviously of the strong belief that NFTs
Sorry for
and
cutting up Disco.
blockchain. Go on.
Who actually won the round?
I think
TNN.
normal.
Yeah, TNN won both rounds so far. I'm keeping
Oh,
track
right.
of it.
So congratulations to the new normal for that, for both 2 rounds. But yeah, so Reddit have actually gone and introduced everybody to NFTs without them realizing. I did unfortunately see one person say that they spent a few $1,000s on avatars that then dropped in value, and then said, why can't I get a refund? What is this, an NFT? And unfortunately for them, it was. So yes, maybe there would be some benefit into being slightly open, but I think this is a common theme we're seeing across the crypto industry now, in particular with NFTs, in that they are NFTs by everything except name, whether it be digital collectibles, avatars in a vault, whatever it is. We do think that they're going to become relevant, and you're going to see them everywhere. You just probably won't know half of the time, as was the case here. But yeah, in terms of actual user adoption and getting people into it, that's probably the biggest thing to have happened so far within the industry. I think certainly for NFTs, especially.
I think the Reddit NFTs, they weren't as negatively received by a lot of people, but I think that's also partially because it was, I believe, completely free to get. And I think that's essentially, I think that probably matters more to most people, is that whether or not something is free or not.
So the initial Reddit avatar was free. I got one. I assume every Reddit user got one in some form or another. You could choose from some collections and so forth. And they would stay in your Reddit account. It would just be in your Reddit account, but you would have the option to withdraw one for free. Any subsequent withdrawals would then incur some on-chain transaction fees, which on Polygon on Massive. Now, bear in mind, though, that Reddit, of course, for a long time have been selling digital consumable items in the form of their awards, their Reddit coins.
Oh my god, the Reddit awards.
Indeed.
Gold.
And in terms of customizations for the avatar, which subsequently have then become NFTs. So I personally think it's good in that, at least people do now have the option to trade them off and resell them. you know, is it good they've done it in a backhanded way? I don't know. They don't seem to have picked up too much flack for it, so maybe that is the right approach, or certainly was for them. But it's interesting to see just how many people now actually have an NFT without fully realizing that.
Okay, so let's go back to Twitter a little bit. I think something that was mentioned was that I'm not even. I don't want to say that you're wrong, but at least I don't. At least I'm not aware, Eki, that you know, whether or not you have the verification is gonna make your post more viewed, I guess.
I mean, they explicitly said that.
Oh,
They're
they said that?
prioritizing
Okay,
people
okay.
who pay. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
You'll get. Yeah, your responses will basically get prioritized in the way that they appear. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It'll make people who choose not to get the verification harder to find, which then just ends up creating two different classes of user. And honestly, like, as a business decision, I don't know how to feel about that. Like, they might make more money from the people who stick around and do that, but ultimately, as a social network, your content comes from the number of users you have who are contributing to it. And that number is going to go down if a portion of the users who don't want to pay a subscription fee for something that they kind of feel bad about spending time on most of the time, just bail and find something new. Like, there are plenty of social networks out there. It just kind of takes like momentum for people to go to one.
Do you
I think it's a good point, because I think in terms of, will it prevent new users who potentially would have been the content creators of tomorrow from joining and trying to build up an audience on that platform? Quite possibly. I think anybody who's already got an audience on that platform, most likely to pay to retain and maintain that audience, because, you know, building up a brand is hard, and it takes a while to get to that stage. So I do think there will be people who will just pay it, probably out of spite, but simply because they feel they have no choice. Otherwise, they're going to lose everything that they've been working on for however long. But I do think new content creators will look at that and think, well, actually, I need to build up an audience and then pay money for it. And, you know, am I going to get a return on that investment? Don't know. So is it worth it for them, or will they start just looking to other platforms where they're not having to pay a fee, quite possibly?
Do you guys think that this would be a solution for all the bots in Twitter? Like paying a subscription?
I
No,
don't.
because there will still be free tiers. This is just for that blue tick mark next to your name to show you're a verified profile, and it will involve some form of verification still, and make your post slightly more prominent. Though, of course, you're competing with all the other blue tick marks and everyone else who's paying. And that's the other aspect as well, in that in opening that up to people, does it actually dilute the value of that
And
verification
how much
process?
is it to subscribe?
$8
per month?
$8 a month, yeah, is what they've quoted.
It's interesting
That's now.
because
I'm sure it will go up.
It's
in the
like
future.
you're a Netflix, right?
yeah, I think realistically, I feel like, I don't know, like if YouTube was $8 a month.
But you could do like a premium and
Yeah,
but if you
on a family, and you could share it with others. So
no,
I
I
think
mean
YouTube
$8 a
Premium on its own
month
is about
for
$10 or
creators.
something.
Like if you could pay YouTube $8 a month to have your videos more prioritized in their algorithm, I think a lot of people probably would do that. I think you can already do that, can't you?
well, I mean, you can buy bots to inflate your views.
No. I mean, you can
and therefore get more prominent. But
can't you buy like ads to promote your YouTube videos?
you can buy advertisements on YouTube,
Yeah.
which could potentially be a promo for your own YouTube channel or video. Yeah,
Exactly. So is that different than what Twitter is
it
doing?
would be, yeah. So those would come up as promoted ads, or in Twitter's feed as a promoted post. Whereas the blue tick mark just makes it slightly more likely that the algorithm will present that to you. Again, still based on your content and interests and your previous behavior on the platform.
Yeah, Twitter already has promoted tweets. Yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
And TikTok has stuff like that as well, from what I've seen. Instagram. I don't know if I talked about this before, but I like Instagram ads. I don't know about you guys, but I like Instagram ads. Instagram always shows me what I want to see.
So I don't use Instagram at all.
Algorithmic.
In fact, I've never even created a profile on it until yesterday, and that's only because I might be able to buy some illicit goods from there that I can't buy through other platforms. So that's the only reason I've created Instagram now, and same with the Wicker account actually. But as a social media platform, for me personally, I find no interest in just looking at other people's pictures. There are plenty of other places I can do that, and I don't solely want to look at pictures. For those people who do, I'm sure it's great. But yeah, personally, I've never got into it because it never interested me in the first place.
Yeah, I'm not really big on Instagram most of the time. Like it's primarily visual and video based, and I don't like pictures or videos of myself.
But Eki,
So-
come on, all the selfies.
Yeah. Now that I've trained an AI model to kind of change my appearance, I might be more on there. But but
Just
Twitter-
for our
Twitter's
audience,
like-
not. Oh, go on,
Oh,
Eki,
sorry.
go on. Finish. Sorry.
I was going to say Twitter isn't a platform that you create content on. It's kind of a platform where you advertise that content. You send people to other platforms to consume it generally, because it doesn't have tools for you to create content. It's literally just posting. Like, what are you creating? Fucking shit posts?
Oh
and
no, I
memes?
think actually
Well,
I
They
disagree
are
with
some
that.
of them are more popular accounts, aren't they? On Twitter, is the shit posting and the memes. You
Yeah.
can directly embed videos into your tweets as well, or upload them with images.
I
But
think
you're right
yeah.
to say that a lot of the time it does seem to be an avenue to lead into other content portals.
I think Twitter is very good for news. That's what I use Twitter a lot for actually. It's for news. I think it seems like most of the news is going to be broken on Twitter first. At least with regards to like sports, esports and things like that. And I would consider that to be content, So I do think Twitter does have content.
I can see
Certainly-
that.
For crypto, it does seem to be the most accessible place for news. As you'll know, with Telegram, that those who use it, you've got to be very specific. You have to know exactly where you're going to, and then receive the content from that particular provider. Whereas Twitter is more open in that sense, in that you can go and view content from anybody. There is readily available content people do, because it's social media, post to it, and it's more public than other platforms like Facebook, where you have to be following someone, you have to be their friend in order for your content to be seen. Whereas Twitter, you can create that, and regardless of whether they follow you regularly or not, anybody can go and just view that. So I think there are certainly some advantages, and crypto in particular, the industry does seem to be very heavily built within Twitter these days. Reddit initially, Twitter more so now. And in fact, a lot of the things I've talked about with FTT and FTX, that information all came from Twitter. So I do agree that as a news platform, it is good. Now, of course, it is still a social media platform, and therefore not everything's verified. You do get some fake news, false news,
Oh yeah,
wrong
the
interpretations
misinformation
from
is
people.
crazy.
Right.
It is. There's a lot of that, and you have to be able to navigate that to an extent. But yeah, there are some advantages, and I do browse on there quite regularly. Actually, I was never into Twitter when I first set it up years and years ago. I just couldn't get my head around it. It didn't make sense. Once I started going into Twitter, into crypto, then that's when I became more prominent on that platform.
Yeah.
Dude, this guy. Okay, there we go. I finally got him. Okay.
And I still was the first to be taken out again as soon as I found the right server.
Okay, I believe this is going to be our last game of Pandemonium, right? We
Yeah.
played quite a few rounds here. Very good discussion today. I like the talks we had today. Very educational as well.
Yeah. What was I gonna say? And one of the things that you would typically use to kind of validate a news source is a blue check mark. And
You're right. Oh no.
suddenly that becomes utterly worthless for that purpose. I think they will have, he mentioned like some tiny white text beneath it that said it would differentiate people, but I don't know how effective that's going to be, you know.
Okay, but can't you have like a red check mark and maybe like a green check mark and maybe just like, you know, like a bundle of cash, you know?
I don't think that's going to be something that they have.
It just adds more confusion to the people if they have something like that.
Yeah. Ultimately, it's really just Elon grasping for things to try in some way to make this like at least appear profitable enough that he can then sell it off at some point.
You're right. He probably will sell it, huh?
He'll probably try to. I don't know if he'll succeed, but he'll try and make it look like something that he didn't want to do, or he'll try and, you know, he's a marketer first and everything else next. That's pretty much mostly what he does, is maintain his standing amongst his simps, and you know, if he'll just try and navigate this, attempting to basically play every side while simultaneously appearing above mortal concerns. And you can, like, if you just like look at his posts, it's pretty obvious he's like really trying hard to do all of that.
Yeah, I feel like he's definitely seems like he's like backtracking on some things. Some things are a little bit contradicting, which I guess like I don't really blame him for. I feel like, you know, if I was in the same situation, I probably would feel the same way. I don't know. It's probably not easy.
$44 billion.
You know what? If I had $440 billion, I probably would.
Alright, so that concludes our last round of Pandemonium and Binzy. If we could revert back the server to what it was before.
Alright.
So for anybody who is interested in some of those FTX finance developments that we talked about earlier in the stream, I've just posted a couple of links to Twitter, coincidentally, where so what I've shared is CZ, head of Binance, just announcing the sale of their FTT tokens, Sam Bankman-Friedman's, which I hadn't seen actually until I was just searching for this source material just now, and I need to read that in full. His response to some of the activities, trying to control the FUD. There's also just some on-chain analysis around FTX's or Alameda Research's position within MIM and how they are fully collateralized and fully maxed out on their loan against that collateral, as well as the initial and link to the article that kind of set this all into motion, posted a couple of days ago. So that's the most recent Twitter link. And yeah, if you've got an interest in that or want a good clarification as to what's been happening, that's probably the best place to start. That kind of breaks it down in fairly good detail and clear language as to what the potential issue is with Alameda. And everything from there is popcorn material, I think. So yeah, strap in, hold on tight. Who knows how this one's going to play out.
Okay, guys, what are we crafting today?
What does the chat say?
Twitch chat, you guys decide. If you guys don't say anything, then Maiev is going to be deciding, as always. And you guys don't want Maiev to decide.
Come on, guys.
One vote for Hellfire.
Hellfire.
I guess going back to the AI model thing, I'm like messing around with Dream Booth, which is a way of training an AI model to basically emphasize or teach an AI model to create something, and I'm trying to kind of get used to that and what I guess different parameters of that process will do to the model, so that I can use it for generating items a bit easier and at a higher quality. We'll see if it pays off in that end, but I managed to train it on my face pretty well. And yeah, got some. I'm currently trying to like generate myself in a bunch of different situations and seeing if that in turn helps me train the model more, because that's something we can kind of use with our own items, I suppose.
Can you do it with Binzy's fist?
Or do you want us to show your faces?
Nah,
Your
it's
face.
cool. You can absolutely not do that. That'd be great.
With those images that you've generated, it's like we could already make like an Ekki's t-shirt range.
Oh my god.
Jeez.
You have like 50 designs.
I see 2 votes
Already
for
for
Exile,
printing.
2 votes for Hellfire so far.
Yeah, so it doesn't help, but we need another vote.
Next vote wins. Next vote wins. Unless they pick something else.
Come
So
on,
what
I
I
can
will-
in. I can in.
Can I vote? I'll vote for
Yeah.
Exile.
All right.
Okay. I guess Discomonk has spoken. We are going to craft more Exile. 2,204 crafted so far. Will we be the lucky 40?
All right.
So I suppose while you're
Oh wait, I
doing
need
the
to.
draws,
I should probably do the stream elements thing first, right? I should probably pick the people
Indeed.
first before crafting. Almost forgot.
And
What's going on?
need
So
more
there were
drones.
some other developments in the crypto world recently, which is probably worth mentioning. Craig Wright, the self-proclaimed yet unproven Bitcoin inventor, did lose a court case against a Twitter user called Hodlnaut, who basically called Craig Wright a fraud for claiming to be Satoshi Nakamoto, the Bitcoin inventor. Craig Wright then took him to court for slander and lost that court case over in Norway. So that's a great victory for anybody who doesn't believe that Craig Wright is Satoshi Nakamoto. In addition to that, Edward Snowden has been quite active on Twitter recently and has actually been joining in with some of the camaraderie on there, and recently posted Bitcoin's white paper in celebration of 14 years since that was released, and made a comment around how 14 years ago Bitcoin was released, yet Satoshi still remains anonymous. Craig Wright decided to respond and say that he was never anonymous, you traitorous scum, to Edward Snowden, who then called out, actually in the white paper specifically, it mentions that, yes, he chose anonymity. So, of course, Craig Wright, if he was Satoshi, can't even get his story straight. There's another cell phone quite recently around that too, whereby he declared that you don't need to validate your own nodes. And of course, within the white paper itself, it says that. And he called someone out for not understanding Bitcoin, for not needing to validate their own nodes and transactions. And yeah, so interesting developments there. Still, it looks like we are no closer to truly knowing who Satoshi Nakamoto is, but we're certainly one step closer to knowing who he isn't.
Is that the greatest mystery of like the 2000s?
It is, yeah. So again, nobody has stepped forth. It's highly suspected that it was one of Craig Wright's former partners, and the name eludes me now, but unfortunately is deceased, died a few years ago. That was where some of the trouble started in terms of the court cases for Craig Wright trying to prove himself as Satoshi Nakamoto. Essentially, he's never been able to offer evidence that he is Satoshi Nakamoto. The only thing in his favor is that he won a court case because nobody could prove that he wasn't Satoshi Nakamoto, and he's using that as a basis to stake his claim as the infamous individual. But of course, every time you pull on that thread, it just falls apart. So he's having quite a tough time trying to maintain that persona, which is good. I don't love frauds. So, and he's definitely not Satoshi Nakamoto, so screw him.
Hey, what is that behind you, Disco?
What is that? Behind me is a mass of mess. This is my office, so it's the last room in the house that's going to get sorted because I just come in here to work, and usually I'm on Microsoft Teams and it automatically puts a background that covers all that mess. I haven't quite worked out how to do it through OBS or just directly on a webcam, so unfortunately you will see all of that. That board
Looks like a
there,
blackboard.
It is a blackboard indeed. So it was originally. There we go. It does say welcome and happy Halloween. We had a Halloween party. Prior to that, it was used for our wedding to say congratulate or welcome people to our wedding. And following that, my brother-in-law's engagement party as well. So it's had its uses. It's now going to hide whatever rubbish is behind it, just to make it slightly less cluttered. Though that side is still pretty bad. And yeah, we'll clear it up at some point.
If you ever need to explain something, you got a blackboard you can draw on.
Yeah.
That's pretty useful.
That is true. Maybe I should have done that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually pretty useful for explaining things, you know?
I will certainly keep that in mind. I can't guarantee I will ever use that. But I'll keep it in mind.
Okay, and one more thing. Since you say router, like if you
Oh my god.
if you have
Here we
like
go again.
if you have like, you know, let's say like route, like on Pokemon, if you're on like route 5,
No,
do you say
no, you're
route
on
5?
Yeah, Route 66. Get your kicks on Route 66. Never heard the song?
It's route.
No, it's not.
Oh my god.
It is if you can't talk properly, but there we go.
Can't we all just agree that you could pronounce it in both ways?
Well, no, there's a right way and a wrong way. You can't
I
just,
am
you can't just misspell things and mispronounce things and then call it a different language.
Because
You can't say,
yeah, I
oh, it's
guess,
American English because I just forgot how to spell and forgot how to talk. It's still English. You're just doing it wrong.
well, he has a point. It's their original language, so we might as well stick with how they pronounce things. But yeah.
Oh my god.
Either or, it works for me. People will still get it if I say route or route.
It's like over here, it would be perfectly acceptable if I was in need of a cigarette and I didn't have any, for me to approach somebody in the street and say, excuse me, could I possibly bum a fag? But for some reason in America, you probably get your ass kicked in. Couldn't work out why.
How often do you ever say that to people?
Not very often, because these days I always have my own cigarettes. But when I was a teenager, I'd say that now and again. Yeah.
Wait, a teenager?
I started smoking at like 13, and at that age I didn't have the income to supplement that habit.
Oh yeah, it must be expensive, huh?
It is these days, yeah.
How much? How much is a pack of cigarettes out there?
So I smoke rolling tobacco, partly because of the cost, partly because it's slightly easier to roll other things with, and just habit as well. I quite like the habit of sitting there rolling a cigarette. It kills another 30 seconds before I kill myself through smoking. So I like that aspect. But yeah, I think a packet of cigarettes for a pack of 20 is probably about $15 nearing $20 these days.
How long does that last you?
That would last these days maybe about a day and a half or so.
Really?
I don't smoke loads, probably 10, 15 a day or something.
Wait, is that not loads?
Just not too many, of course.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
Is it a lot?
To me, that
I don't
sounds
know.
like a
I used
lot.
to smoke about 30, 40 a day, so it doesn't seem like a lot, but maybe it is.
You're about the same. You smoke about the same amounts as my brother. My brother, he smokes around 2 packets a day, and usually a packet I usually go for like one packet a week or 2 packets a week. And,
Oh, so you're like 2 or 3 a day or something like that.
but cigarettes are like just $3 here for a packet. So it's still pretty cheap compared there.
Yeah, I think to be honest, if it was $3 a packet, I'd probably go back to 40, 60 a day or something. Just might as well. But yeah, not great.
All right, so
Maybe
14
they're
people in the
Don't smoke
giveaway,
if
about
it's bad for you.
2,000 tickets. I'll go ahead and probably close it now. Let's see who we get. We'll pick 5 winners. Good luck, everybody. TNN gets another entry.
new normal.
Sassy boy.
10% chance.
Mr. Buggins, Energy, IQ, and LL
Fortress.
No Scared. Okay, there we go.
Oh, no.
Wow, TNN entered how many tickets? 20% chance to win? That's
20%.
crazy.
Ooh.
Oh, 422 tickets.
400.
Wow. That's a lot of tickets.
I
All right.
entered like 200 tickets. No.
You should have put in more, Maiev.
Yeah. Should have placed it all.
All right, let's get our winners
Nah, I'm not
from
holding back my
Pandemonium.
tickets next time.
Got TNN winning twice.
So I don't recognize Energy IQ as a
He
winner anyway.
is-
I believe he's already
Fortress.
won before.
Is that
Oh, that's
Fortress?
Fortress?
Okay.
Yeah.
Really?
Fortress is Energy IQ. Yeah.
Ah, I see, I see.
If I recall correctly.
Cool. Okay. Pull up the wheel and then we'll see who gets lucky.
Definitely is Fortress. Let me check.
Oh, come on. Is it not going to pick up my screen? Can you guys see the wheel? Let me see. This should be showing up, no? Ah,
Yeah.
there we go. There we go. Okay, here we go. Oh, I know most of you are not League players, but anybody that did watch it, that was the greatest League of Legends World's finals in history. Honestly, probably the best match of the best set of League of Legends I've ever seen. That was a great finals.
How many were the kills, Panda?
I don't know, but I won my bet, so I'm happy.
Is that why
Nice.
it was the greatest final?
No,
I'm
it
trying
was
to-
legitimately really
The
like it
actual
was really
performance
good.
of
I'm
the
trying
match,
to-
just the outcome was good.
No, it was a really good
guys,
match. It was a really good
offering
match.
Panda to play Dota 2 with me. I'll even play in the US server. So you could get out of League.
No, I'm going back to League now. I'm inspired after watching the games. Like I actually want to go back and play now. I might actually go back and play, honestly. It's been a while, but
Panda is a strong League player. When I check his profile, it says there that he is a challenger League player, and that's like the top players in League.
Yes, you used to
good
be
times.
semi-pro. Is that right, Panda?
yeah, something like that. I played collegiate. I played some amateur. Depends on what you define as semi-pro. I mean, I guess like back in the day, I guess I was
Like a
probably
tier
closer.
2 pub star, or are you something like that?
Like if back in the
Professional is
day,
somebody
I would
who
probably
does it for a living, and a semi-pro would be somebody who doesn't do it for a living, but does it,
Like a pop star.
plays to a professional standard, or potentially picks up some income.
Yeah,
or some
I guess
sort
you
of
could
sponsorship.
consider it that way then. I played like, I mean, it's hard because League is different than Dota. I think Dota, I guess you have different tiers for tournaments, right? And same with like Counter Strike and everything. You have like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3.
Just 2 tiers.
Oh, just 2 tiers.
Yeah, but getting into tier 1 is really difficult for tier 2 players.
Yeah, I don't know. It's really hard to define. Like I would say back in the day, I it might be myself exaggerating, but I would like to think I was probably in one of the like top 15, 20 teams in the world. But that was a way back in the day, so like I don't know.
Yeah.
And that was before like the entire esports scene has really developed. So like it was very different back then, and yeah.
I remember when Call of Duty.
Oh,
Modern
TNN is in
Warfare
twice and Mr.
4.
Buggins in once for the top 3.
Oh, nice. Good rolls
Anyone
for
wants
TNN.
to
Fingers crossed.
play Overwatch with us?
No, see, I used to play a lot of first-person shooters. Like back in the days when I had free time, I was in the top 4,000 for Call of Duty Modern Warfare when that came out. And I used to be in the top 200 on the Xbox 360 for Battlefield 1943. I love that game. It is amazing. But yeah, these days just don't have time, probably don't have the reflexes that's needed. And yeah, I'm just so out of shape. But I do, first-person shooters used to be my thing, Battlefield more so, because Call of Duty is very much Twitch knee-jerk reactions. You know, it's just your reaction time that counts. And knowing the level and going through the level each time, whereas I prefer Battlefield because it's just a bit more free-flowing, thinking about, you know, what you're going to do next, what you're going to, you know, you don't have to kill anyone and you could still rack up a lot of points. You could just go kind of commando from flag to flag. So I really like that aspect. And then to get all the vehicles and the way that game's evolved over the years now, when I do have time for a first-person shooter, I do try and jump in, but it's probably been a few months since I last played. And the new one was a bit of a mess, to be honest.
All right, so Bugs does take first place. TNN winning the next couple.
Is already taking us for the mythic. You mentioned the word Panda. So.
Now there we go. Craft 40. Let's see what we get. Let me know if you wanna play Overwatch, Maiev. I'm definitely down to play.
Yeah, I'll download first. Doing some boyfriend.
Isn't that what you said about
duties.
Apex too? I'm down to play Apex as well.
Well, Apex, you need to create like an EA account, and I'm too lazy for that. So.
What? What do you mean? You have to make an account for Overwatch as well.
I already have a Battle.net account, so.
Oh, right, yeah, because it's Blizzard.
Do I have to
right?
register separately?
No, you're good. Alright, so we got a 90, 76, a 75,
Wow.
a 70. So, looks like TNN is
Getting
eating good
rares.
tonight. And of course, a Bug taking home the 90%. Congratulations, guys.
All right.
All right.
Good rolls.
Really good discussion then.
Yeah, good stream, good time.
Yeah.
I'll see you all again. Same time, same channel. I almost missed a stream today because I forgot daylight savings was the thing. I definitely did not realize that the time would change, but the stream time wouldn't. Look at Binzy go.
Yeah,
I was gonna
is
say
that an
Binzy's
emote? Is
going
that an
for it.
emote or are you? No, that's an emote. We've been Binzy been using emotes all the time.
All right. Well, I guess that's all we have for you guys this week. We'll catch you guys all again next week. Same channel, same time. And have a good night, everybody.
Thanks all.
Good night,
Yeah.
all.
Night, everyone.